You're watching Car Nitty. My name is Mizan, and today I'm revealing my brand new car. It's the replacement for the R32. So what's your thoughts then? Did anyone guess right? When I sold the R32, did anyone think that good old Mizan was gonna get himself into a C63? Let me know in the comments below, because I'd be very surprised if people knew the kind of car that I'd be upgrading to from the R32, because the R32 was a very special car to me, and the car that replaced it had to be even more special, obviously. So you might be wondering, why did I buy a C63? Well, there's only one reason why AMG owners buy an AMG in the first place, and it's always because of the hand-built engine up front. Now when I say this, I am talking about 63 models and 45 models. The 43 models, the 53 models and the 35 models, they're not real AMG cars, but that's a topic for another day. But an AMG owner buys one because of this: one engine, one man, hand built. This one in particular was built by Stefan Williameth. I think that's what it says. The signatures are always a bit abstract, because if something goes wrong, I'm telling you, it's so you can't put the blame on that guy. I won't cost him his job if something suddenly goes wrong with this, but touch wood, nothing does. Now, the best thing about this car is obviously the fact that it's a 6.2 litre naturally aspirated V8 producing 460 brake horsepower and 600 newton-meters of torque. That's an immense amount of power for a car that has no aid from a turbocharger or a supercharger. And this is why this is the golden era of German saloons, if you ask me. Selling the R32 was a very difficult decision. It's not something that I wanted to do. I really love R32s, but the thing that I was struggling about was the road tax. So this car, in terms of road tax, is about £700 a year, and the R32 was the exact same band. I was paying the same amount. Now on the R32, it's quite hard to justify because it's a 10 grand, sub 10 grand car, and to pay that kind of money on road tax, it is very painful, and it's not the fastest of cars as well, by the way. Whereas with the C63, it's a lot more easier to swallow the fact that I'm paying that much, because it's a C63. And that was one reason why I had to let the R32 go. And on top of that, I had the car for 2 years. It was my second R32. It's been too long. It's time I moved away from it. And I looked at the market and I thought, what do I want? And if I'm being honest with you, the C63 was always a dream car. It always was. Since the day they came out, I couldn't believe that, you know, a manufacturer could put a 6.2 litre naturally aspirated V8 into a saloon. Now, I know in the States, you know, it's quite common. You know, you got Mustangs and Challengers and Camaros, Hellcats, whatever you want to call them. But the point is, in Europe, that's not a big thing. And we had this golden generation, and the C63 was that bonkers car of the lot. The competitors to this car is the B7 RS4, something I've had on the channel, and I loved that car. It's actually a better driving car than this, something I'll cover later. And obviously the E92 M3, again, something that I've not had on the channel yet, but I've driven it and I love it. And I have to be honest, the C63 is the weakest car in terms of driving, but in terms of engine, it's the best car of all three of them. Again, something I'll cover later. But regardless, the only reason why I bought this car was because of this. It literally was that. And arguably, it's a very good looking car, but it's also subtle, and that kind of suits my style. And it was obviously about the trio, which I spoke about a second ago. And for me, the C63 just had that appeal. When I saw it on Top Gear and Jeremy had the C63, even in the pre-facelift guys, I fell in love with it. The looks, I'll be honest with you, the front end of a pre-facelift is a lot more aggressive than this car. This car's got a more prettier front end. The pre-facelift has more of a shark face. It's a lot more angry. But then the interior is so much more nicer in this car. It's a no-brainer. And on top of that, the engine, which is the M156 lump, Mercedes or AMG, they did a few tweaks, so the engine's a lot more reliable on this later model than it is on the pre-facelift. And to be fair, I don't know anyone with a pre-facelift, so it made me think, it's going to be a hard sell when I do decide to part with it. So I had to get a facelift. So yes, C63 was obviously in the running for my new car, and it won. But what was also in the equation, and that was the B7 RS4. I drove Shax's one on the channel, and if you rewatch that video, you'll see the joy in my face. It was an amazing car to drive. I honestly loved it. It's one of the, if you ask me, someone asked me the other day, what's the best car you've ever driven? And I have to be honest, I did say it's the B7 RS4, because I've driven an R8 Gen 1 with a 4.2 litre V8, and the RS4 feels just like that, with a manual gearbox in a saloon, a lot more dayliable, a lot more livable, and it's definitely one of the best cars I've ever driven. And that's why for me, I really wanted one of those. But then I looked at the general consensus of a B7, and I have to be honest with you, not a lot of people understand what that car's about. You know, because it's a Quattro Audi, people think it understeers. It doesn't. It drives beautifully, as I covered in the video. But the point is, it's an amazing car, and I really wanted the Audi, if I'm being honest with you. I did. I had my heart set on the Audi. But what put me off was, when I do decide to let go of it, it's going to be an absolute ball ache, number one. And number two, it's not as loved. And the problem I have is, again, it comes down to this: I have to buy the right example. Now, yes, they're all manuals, spec, they're very similar. It's just the wingbacks really and the color. A problem I had is, in terms of mileage, the ones that were lower mileage and the collector's versions, they were costing a lot more than a C63. But I could get into one cheaper than the C63, but would have about 110, 20,000 miles. The problem is, to shift those, it's going to be quite hard. So I instantly found myself priced out of the B7 RS4. I just felt like I can't, you know, one end of the spectrum I can afford it, the other spectrum I can't. So I had to kill that dream, unfortunately. Then I looked at the E92 M3 and the E93. Now, the E93 is an amazing choice, because you can pick them up for as low as 12, 13 grand. And the coupe, the E92, you can pick them up for about 17, 18. And if I'm being honest with you, I'm not really tracking my car. I'm just enjoying my car, day-to-day life, but have a bit of a V8 grumble under my foot, and, you know, it drives spirit every now and then. So the E93 was good enough, because the E92 was the same money as the C63. And if I've got to pick between the E92 and the C63, as much as I love the E92, there's something about the C63. And on top of that, the E92s are plagued with, you know, rod bearings and throttle actuator issues. There's quite a few issues, and ideally you want one with the issues resolved, or you want to buy it for cheap enough that it covers your pockets when you do pay for those repairs out of your own pocket. And the E92 quickly became the same category as the RS4, where if I buy one, I'm in that same category where it's costing more than the C63 in the long run. Short run is cheaper, long run is going to cost me more. So I wrote off the E92 M3. So it's actually between this and the E93 M3. And funnily enough, one of my friends managed to buy an E93 M3, and it's a lovely car. I drove the car. That car is more well suited to my personality than this is. But I didn't feel comfortable buying the same car as my friend, not because he's going to say to me I copied him or anything, but you know, when someone already buys a car close to you and they have that car, you think to yourself, what's the point of buying the same car? You know, live a little, buy something different. So I didn't buy it. I chose not to buy an E93, and they are a bit more cheaper than this. But again, it falls in the same category as the RS4. Resale can be difficult for the E93 purely because it's not the one to get, it's the E92. So everything kept pointing towards the C63, and here I am. And I picked this one up for a very competitive price. I couldn't argue, and I'm happy. I'm genuinely happy. Right, this car is very tail happy. It doesn't have an LSD, which makes this car very scary to drive. Very scary to drive, if I'm being honest, because it's very unpredictable. The back can slide on you. It's happened to me. Having good rubber is very important in this car. This car keeps you on the edge of your seat, I'll tell you that. It's a scary car to drive. I've had it for 6 months. It still scares me. The brakes are excellent. 6-pot brakes up front. I would have gone 8 pots if I had bought a RS4, but I'm happy. Since I bought it, I've done an X-pipe on the car. So I've taken the resonators out, it's got an X-pipe. I will be doing a secondary decat next because I want a bit more of that oomph. I want a bit more of that noise. But yeah, this car is unbelievable. I mean, it just makes me think, why would you want more than this? Why would you want more? This is more than enough power. It's just amazing. There's people out there pushing 5, 6, oh, this is almost 500 horsepower, so forget that, but 600, 700 horsepower, why? Why? And the fact that this car is naturally aspirated means I rev the car out, which means I get to hear that exhaust note. If it wasn't NA and a turbo kicked in, number one, it'd ruin the noise, and number two, I wouldn't feel the need to wring its neck. I wouldn't feel the need to push it to, you know, the 7,250 red line limit. And honestly, this is, it's a car that keeps on the edge of your seat. But in general, it's such a refined performance car. I mean, I've got this digital temperature gauge up front, which I think is amazing. It's only, you only get it on the AMG cars because it's part of the AMG menu. But I love it. It's just crazy. And I just love the exhaust. There's nothing that can beat this car. The B7 sounds amazing in its own sense. It has this grunt. The E92 M3 also has this grunt, but nothing is identical to this. I mean, when you look at the Audi and the BMW, when they went to the F80 from the E92 M3, how many people swear by the E92? There are some, but most of the world accepted it and they moved into the F80. When Audi went to the B8 from the B7, people accepted it. But when they went from this to the W205, a lot of people didn't accept it. They weren't happy that it was downsized to a 4 litre and that 2 turbos were added. And that for me just says a lot. I genuinely think this car is amazing. And I'm so happy that I got to own a piece of history, because that's what it feels like with this car. It's a piece of history. In terms of future plans with this car, I'm going to do what I want to the car. I'm going to do a partial D-chrome eventually. Like I said, I will do the exhaust mod I mentioned. That's about it really. Put tyres on it. And just look after it really. I don't know how long I'm going to keep it, but I really don't want to let it go. I love this car and I don't want to let it go anytime soon. Is it good enough to be my forever car? Maybe. If I don't need the funds from this car, then why not? But what an amazing feat of engineering this engine was from AMG. And I'm so happy, because I've said it so many times on Carnegie that this is the golden era. You know, we should be happy that we got to see it, and we should get into these whilst we can. And I live by my words, and I think that's so important. How many people tell you to do something, but they don't even live by their words? I live by my words. And I hope if you're watching and there's a part of you that wants to own a car in this sort of, you know, level, you do it. And one other car I forgot to mention, which deserves its own right, is the Lexus ISF, which also has a 5 litre naturally aspirated V8. And again, amazing car, and I'd say it's very similar to this car. It's very soft, forgiving compared to the other. It's not soft as in it's a bolt, but it's soft compared to the other 2 cars. But again, reliability is very strong on the ISF compared to the B7 and the E92. So pick your poison, I'd say. Pick your poison. If I didn't buy this car, I don't think the inner child within me would have ever forgiven me.
This was a poster car for so many of my formative years, and when I realised that I can afford to run and maintain one of these, I just had to go for it. I may possibly own a V10 if I'm lucky, which is my favourite engine configuration, but you can count the number of road cars that featured one with both your hands, so the odds aren't great. The W204 is one of those cars that's just timeless. Even when it was replaced with the W205, no one rushed to part exchange it against the newer model because everyone knew this car was part of automotive history and how lucky they were to experience it. Looking back, it's still mind-boggling that AMG put an engine of this magnitude in the shell of a C-Class. And what an era that was. Manufacturers could build cars as mad as their wildest dreams. That freedom was unmatched, and it slowly lessened to the next generation, where now the W206 C63 is a 2-litre hybrid. I don't think it deserves to wear the fabled 63 badge, but the sad part is we'll probably miss that car when AMGs are pure EVs. That's just the sad state of the world.